Today I'm going to break down 2 ways to train explosiveness while decreasing impact on the knees. Option number 1 is a weighted trap bar jump. Now, I know that sounds crazy. How can jumping with weight be a way to actually decrease impact on the knees? Well, here's how. I'm starting the exercise on 12-inch boxes. I'm taking off with max intent, and I get much lower than I would in a normal jump. As far as force output goes, I'm getting above 2,500 newtons of force on the takeoff, and on the landing, I'm barely getting above 3,000, which is rare in any jumping exercise. Normally, the peak force on landing is way above the peak force on takeoff, but with this exercise, we actually get high peak concentric forces on the takeoff and relatively low peak forces on the landing. Now, the reason for that is I'm not sticking the landing with that weight. So as I land, I'm not immediately stopping myself, and I let the weights drop to the boxes and then I stop myself. So now I'm jumping maybe a quarter of my maximal jump height if I was unloaded. So I'm dropping from a much lower jump height, and then I'm basically landing with my body weight with maybe a little bit of additional load, but most of that weight on the trap bar is being absorbed by the boxes, not by my joints. Now let's compare that to an unloaded body weight landing. The average high school athlete jumps somewhere in the mid-20s, so I'm going to drop off a 24-inch box and simulate that landing, and you'll see that I get 4,500 newtons of force when I do a normal hard landing that's seen most of the time in basketball. 4,500 newtons of force, which means that's over 1,000 pounds of force. That's over 5 times my body weight every time I land from a 24-inch jump, and I jump higher than 24 inches, so it's over 5 times my body weight every time I'm landing, even just from a standing counter movement jump. Now that's with a hard landing. What about if I make the landing as soft as possible? That landing from the 24-inch jump is still over 3,500 newtons of force, which is still significantly higher than my loaded jump. Now, another way we can decrease that impact and decrease those landing forces is simply jump to a box. So even if I just used a 12-inch box and I did a 1-step maximal jump, my peak force on landing is only 2,100 newtons of force. So it's much lower peak forces, actually around only 50% of what I saw in that 24-inch box drop. So that is a way that we can significantly decrease the impact. And that's with a 12-inch box. That's with me getting high and coming down to it. If I were to go to a 24-inch box or a 30-inch box, where now I'm not coming down from a big height, I'm just getting on that box, that force would go down even more. So we're getting really high concentric outputs with very low landing forces. Now, keep in mind, impact on landing isn't bad. We have to expose the body to that. We have to progressively overload. We got to get our athletes used to that impact, because on the court, they're taking thousands and thousands of pounds of force every single play, and our knees have to be able to handle that. But there are times of the year where your on-court volume is really high and you're already getting a lot of that pounding. And if we still want to build some explosiveness, that's where it's great to implement drills like this, where we could still train that concentric output but not get that same impact. Now, also keep in mind, just because we're escaping the impact doesn't mean it's necessarily easy on the knees. Anytime that we do maximal jumping, even if there's zero impact, it could still flare up patellar tendinopathy or other knee problems, because when it comes to conditions like patellar tendinopathy, spring forces is often what sets it off, and you're still getting spring forces even if you get rid of the landing.